Jason, why don't you stand over here and Andy stand over there? All right?
Need a little direction.
All ready?
Mm-hmm. Cindy. There you
Okay. Morning, ladies and gentlemen. As you know, my name is Richard Bauer. I'm the District Attorney of Fayette County. And just to give it a little background, this will be our third press conference in regard to the grand jury proceedings. There's a couple of extras that we're going to throw in at the end, and I'll discuss those at that time. But just to give you the background, in December of 2019, I approached the County Commissioners of Fayette County concerning matters related to seating a grand jury to investigate several matters. After discussions with them, the Commissioners David Lord, Vincent Presides, and Scott Dunn, who's with us today, in January 2020 included in my budget monies to conduct the grand jury. Thereafter, the President and Judge signed an order approving the grand jury for Fayette County on January the 8th, 2020. The grand jury was impaneled on February the 24th, 2020, and to date we have had 12 days of hearings. Unfortunately, because of the COVID pandemic, we've had to slow down somewhat. However, we are still moving forward, working through all the things that we have planned and have done. From those proceedings, we've had 117 presentments voted on and approved by the grand jury. As a result of those presentments, my office has obtained an additional 47 orders approving those presentments and the filing of criminal cases in those matters. With me today are Chief Jason Cox of the Uniontown Police Department, Corporal Andrew Haminsky of the Connellsville Police Department, and First Assistant Melinda Delarose. These departments have been essential and crucial in the investigations taken before the grand jury. The Chief County Detective, Uniontown Police, and Connellsville Police have had major roles in several of these investigations. Additionally, I've been assisted by Assistant District Attorney William Martin, Assistant District Attorney Sean Lementowski, and First Assistant District Attorney Melinda Delarose on all the major events. Without their help and the assistance of other personnel throughout my office and the county departments and the local police officers, the state police, and divisions of the state police, our efforts would never have been able to move forward. Now, what we're going to do today is something different. I've always been the only one that's been addressing you, but I'm going to have Melinda Delarose and Jason Cox, the Chief of Police of Uniontown, also addressing you in addition to myself. I had asked Chief William Hammerly to be here today of the Connellsville Police Department, but he was unable to attend as a result of commitments outside of the city of Connellsville. So today, as a representative of the Connellsville Police Department, Corporal Andrew Haminsky is here. Now at this time, I'm going to turn the presentation over to First Assistant Melinda Delarose, and then that will be turned over to Chief Cox, and then I'll be finishing up the press conference. At the end of the presentation, like we've always done before, if you have any questions, we'll be more than willing to take those questions and answer what we can. Also, I've provided to you all, I believe, copies of most of every complaint, and if there are any missing, I'll get them to you. Thank you very much. I'm going to turn it over to Assistant Melinda Delarose.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bauer, and thank you all for being here this morning.
I'm going to get this.
The first cases that I wanted to present and discuss involve defendants Adam Morgan, who is an inmate at the Fayette County Prison, Shelby Rosenstiel, Seth Fisher, and Jessica Marie Murray. It is alleged by the Commonwealth that on or about September 22nd, 2020, these individuals conspired to bring contraband into the Fayette County Prison. On that date, September 22nd, 2020, the Uniontown Police Department received a call from the Fayette County Prison advising them that a female had dropped off clothing for another inmate. the clothing contained what appeared to be narcotics. Throughout the investigation, the Uniontown Police Department reviewed conversations and interviewed the female who took the clothing to the Fayette County Prison. Inmate Adam Morgan, as was determined through the investigation, called Shelby Rosenstiel to bring clothes to the Fayette County Prison, actually for another inmate. They made plans where Rosenstiel would meet the female at the Sheets in Connellsville and she gave to her a white plastic bag with blue lettering containing the clothing. The female admitted that she did not check the bag or the clothing prior to dropping it off at the Fayette County Prison. Once the clothing made it to the prison, the review of telephone calls between Adam Morgan, Shelby Rosenstiel, Seth Fisher, and Jessica Marie Murray, it was discovered that the four of them had discussed the clothing drop-off and planned locations for the exchanges. They also spoke about receiving and making payments in different amounts once the narcotics were received and sold. As a result of those facts and through that investigation, those four defendants are charged with corrupt organization, multiple counts of conspiracy, dealing in unlawful proceeds, knowledge that property is proceeds of an illegal act, and proceeds of unlawful acts. All of those in multiple counts. The next case, set of cases also involved inmate Adam Morgan. And in this situation, once again, inmate or defendant Morgan also conspired with other individuals to have narcotics brought into the Fayette County Prison. On this date, April 9th, 2020, Adam Morgan, Melisha Taylor, Shantaya Monet Saunders, and Cody McKell Dennis, who was also an inmate at the Fayette County Prison, conspired to bring the narcotics in. On that date, the Uniontown Police Department received a call from the Uniontown Hospital, the police at the Uniontown Hospital, and advised that a suspicious item was found in the restroom near the emergency department. The suspicious item was a blue glove finger with suspected narcotics. Upon responding and conducting an investigation, Corporal Michael Bittner initially tested the items found in the glove, and it tested positive for marijuana. And also inside the glove were 40 Suboxone strips, suspected at that time. Once the Uniontown Police Department began its investigation, they found discovered multiple telephone conversations between Adam Morgan and Shantaya Saunders. Those discussions revealed that Malaysia Taylor, who was known as Tay as a nickname, would be working at the Uniontown Hospital. Video evidence from the Uniontown Hospital showed Melisha Taylor going into the restroom with a black purse and ultimately coming out, going back to the nurse's station and using her telephone. On that same date, Adam Morgan went to Uniontown Hospital emergency room and insisted upon using the restroom prior to leaving. However, the Uniontown Hospital police escorted him into the bathroom and prevented him from accessing that blue gloved finger. Based upon those facts, charges the four individuals, Adam Morgan, Melisha Taylor, Shantaya Saunders, and Cody Dennis. And incidentally, throughout the investigation and throughout looking at the text messages as well as telephone calls, it was learned that, or was discovered, that Cody Dennis was also involved in conspiring to have the plan for the narcotics to be brought into the prison. Those individuals are charged with manufacturing, delivering, possession with intent to deliver, possession, paraphernalia, and criminal use of a communications facility. Multiple counts of each of those charges. Also through our grand jury, we have filed charges against Kristen Ross, Donna Engel, and June Lease. In this case, on May 14th, 2020, once again, Uniontown Police Department was contacted for an unresponsive male here in the city. Upon arrival on the scene, they did in fact find the unresponsive male identified as Gary Wayne Engel. Through their investigation, they learned that Donna Engel, Gary Wayne Engel's mother, was taken to defendant Kristen Ross's house to purchase heroin. Donna Engel was transported to Kristen Ross's home by June Lease. They made 2 trips that day. On the first trip, they purchased 2 stamp bags of heroin and provided that to the decedent. On the second trip, they purchased 3 bags of heroin. All 5 bags were provided to Gary Engel. At some point during that day, this would be May 13th, 2020, Gary Engel began to feel ill. At that time, no one contacted EMS because, as has been revealed, he usually recovered. During the morning hours of May 14th, 2020, Donna Engel awoke to find Gary Engel making funny breathing noises. At that time, she then called EMS, and Gary Engel was ultimately pronounced deceased at 4:30 a.m. As the lab results, 2 of the stamp bags were still intact. Those items were sent to the crime lab, and the lab results showed that the heroin was laced with fentanyl. Based upon those facts, the defendants, Kristen Ross, Donna Engel, and June Lease, are charged with homicide, drug delivery resulting in death, manufacture, delivery, possession with the intent to deliver, narcotics, possession, and conspiracy. And there are multiple counts of each of those charges. The final case that I am here to present or discuss is the case of Justin Nicholson and Joshua Nicholson. On October 5th of 2020, Justin Nicholson was an inmate at the Fayette County Prison. He spoke with Joshua Nicholson over video and conspired with him to bring Suboxone strips into the Fayette County Prison. There was a video call where Joshua Nicholson actually showed the Suboxone strips to his brother by placing them on his forehead. The way that the Suboxone strips were to be brought into the prison was through clothing. Joshua Nicholson was going to bring a pair of pants to Justin, presumably for court. In the videos and the text messages that were obtained through the investigation, Joshua Nicholson advises Justin Nicholson that the pant leg has some blood on it. And there was some conversation about it being 9 spots, 9 something or other. When the clothing was brought in, it was placed into an evidence locker. Upon searching those items of clothing, specifically a pair of khaki pants, the corrections officers at the Fayette County Prison, as well as the Uniontown Police Department, discovered 9 Suboxone strips in the khaki pants in the hem of those pants. Based upon those facts, those 2 individuals have been charged with contraband, manufacture, delivery, possession with the intent to deliver, possession, paraphernalia, criminal use of a communication facility, and tampering or fabricating physical evidence, and those are multiple counts of each of those charges. Thank you.
The next speaker is going to be Chief Jason Cox, and he's going to be covering several cases that his department has done.
Good morning. As DA Bauer said, my name is Jason Cox. I'm with the Uniontown City Police Department. As part of the grand jury process that the DA initiated, the Uniontown City Police Department has had an opportunity to work in conjunction with them to conduct many of these investigations. This morning I'm going to give you just a brief overview of some of the investigations that we did in and around the Fayette County Jail. The first case involves Alan Myers, Milana Myers, and Virginia Sherman. In this instance, all 3 were charged with contraband, manufacture, delivery, or possession with intent to deliver, possession of a controlled substance, criminal use of communication facility, tampering with or fabricating physical evidence, corrupt organizations, and dealing in proceeds of unlawful activities. In this instance, Alan Myers was an inmate in the Fayette County Jail. He had multiple phone conversations with Melanie Myers and Virginia Sherman, where he requested that they sew Suboxone tablets into the crotch of his dress pants that they would be then bringing him when he appeared for court. Virginia Sherman did deliver that clothing to the Fayette County Jail, and law enforcement was able to intercept that clothing and did locate the suspected at that time Suboxone inside the pants, and all three were charged. In the second case, involving Samuel Ross, Don Price, and Lawrence Farkas, all three of those individuals were charged with corrupt organizations, contraband, and possession of a controlled substance or contraband by an inmate. In this instance, Samuel Ross was an inmate at the Fayette County Jail. He had multiple phone conversations with Don Price and Lawrence Farkas, where Ross requested that they bring Suboxone pills and place them on a rooftop of the annex building inside an HVAC unit, where he could retrieve them. Upon investigation, that package was actually recovered by law enforcement and from the HVAC unit, and did contain the Suboxone that he had requested. Additionally, in a separate investigation, Samuel Ross was arrested for possession of a controlled substance by an inmate and possession with intent to deliver a controlled substance. This investigation revealed that Ross had actually handed a corrections officer an envelope with a note, is what he said, that he needed handed to another inmate. Well, the corrections officer examined that envelope, and upon examination inside the envelope, he found a small square of paper, and inside that square of paper was a white powder substance that subsequently was tested and found to be Suboxone, and Ross was charged accordingly. In an additional investigation, Cody Hannon, Woodrow Hannon, and Bart Yegla were all arrested for contraband, possession of a controlled substance by an inmate, manufacture, deliver, or possession with intent to deliver, possession of a controlled substance, and possession of drug paraphernalia. In this instance, inmate Bart Yegla basically used paper that he wound together along with string to, in essence, create a fishing pole type device. He used this fishing pole type device with the string and lowered it out a window of the jail. He actually used batteries as a bit of an anchor to lower the string down. Upon lowering the string down, Cody was instructed by his brother Woodrow Hannon, who was also an inmate at the Fayette County Jail, where to go to locate this fishing lure, if you will, that was the batteries. He did find it and taped numerous straws to the batteries that contained both fentanyl and Suboxone, and law enforcement was able to, of course, intercept and make the arrest in that investigation as well. Additionally, Gary Kephart was charged with contraband, possession of a controlled substance, and possession of drug paraphernalia. Kephart was observed in video surveillance placing a bag on a window sill that at various times inmates have access to. Upon examination of that bag, law enforcement located both Suboxone and fentanyl and charged Kephart. And lastly, David Kramer was charged with contraband, possession of a controlled substance by an inmate, and criminal use of communication facility. While Kramer was an inmate at the Fayette County Prison, he made numerous calls to his grandmother. In these phone conversations, he solicited her to both purchase and then place Suboxone tablets in his court clothing and bring them to the Fayette County Jail. His grandmother ultimately did not bring those items in, but Kramer, who of course was the orchestrator and requester, was charged with conspiracy to commit those crimes. Thank you.
And just to follow up on the last one that Chief Fox talked about, the grandmother came forward and told the prison officials and the Uniontown Police that she would not do that and turned her grandson in. I think I may just have to have these two do the press conferences from now on. They did a pretty doggone good job, and just so it's known, Commissioner David Lohr also has appeared today. And I'm gonna be talking about several cases. And there are some that are prison cases, but then there are some that are not. We've had agencies coming forward asking us to do investigations, and quite frankly, at the end, I'll tell you, I won't tell you the agencies, but how many more investigations are going on. But I also am talking about Joshua Molnex and Nicole Marie Snyder. Now, this is a very interesting case, and so that you understand it, I'll explain it at the end, but there's 3 counts of conspiracy to produce, present, and direct obscene performances into a prison. Additionally, there's 1 count of indecent exposure, plus 1 count of conspiracy to do that indecent exposure. There's 1 count of conspiracy for controlled substance, and there is 2 counts of possession with the intent to deliver and 2 counts of delivery. There's 1 count of conspiracy of possession, 2 counts of conspiracy. I'm sorry, 1 count of conspiracy of possession, 1 count of possession. Additionally, 1 count of conspiracy to use drug paraphernalia and 1 count of paraphernalia. On September the 21st, 2020, there are 2 situations that occurred within a matter of a week or so. The 2 defendants, the 2 defendants had appeared. One is a prisoner, Joshua Molnex. The other is Joshua Molnex's girlfriend, Nicole Marie Snyder. He was at the prison annex, and in the layout at the prison annex for visitation, there is a room where the prisoner is put in, and then there's glass between the individual visitor. At that time, there are 4 seats. There is a camera exactly reflected down on the prisoner and any visitor. What ended up happening is that the individual started on the right-hand side from the prisoner's standpoint and went down to the end, thinking that the camera did not cover their area. The bad part is, it does. And we have a video of the whole incident where they both performed sex acts in the visitors area and in the inmate area. So that's why they are charged with those counts. The next is a former prisoner guard who was a prisoner guard at the time at the Fayette County Prison, and he was a sergeant at the time, and his name is Jeffrey Tyler Myers. He was charged with stalking for 2 counts, which is a misdemeanor of the 1st degree, obscene and other sexual materials and performances, 1 count, indecent assault, which is 1 count, misdemeanor of the 2nd degree, and harassment, 1 count. This involved Sergeant Myers, former Sergeant Myers, with one of the other guards who is a female. In the female shirt, and all the guards wear the same shirts, there is the ability to have a walkie-talkie connected with a microphone. And there is a hole in the shirt of that, in the hole of that shirt. What ended up happening is they don't use walkie-talkies with microphones, but those holes are there because that's how they're made. Sergeant Myers would stick his fingers down into that hole on several occasions with that other female officer, and he would then take and push his hand down and touch her breast. Additionally, what he would do is also he would hug her repeatedly, and this is all on videotape. The issue about that was he would hug her in a manner the girl could not get away from him. He is a bigger man, probably about 6'2", weighed 220 pounds. The officer is probably about 5'3" at the most. and she was not able to obviously get away from him. But there's another problem here. This is the son of the former warden. And when we talked with the female officer, she indicated that she did not report these things for about 2 weeks or so because she was afraid of losing her job. She was afraid that it would get back to the warden, and because it was his son, she would get fired. Initially, the defense attorney who came up, and we showed him the videos before the preliminary hearing. The defense attorney saw those, and as a result, Mr. Myers has pled guilty to charges of the harassment, the obscene and sexual materials, and the 2 stalkings. We dropped the indecent assault because of the fact that the female officer agreed to do that. He has already been sentenced. In regard to the obscene and other sexual materials and performances, you cannot project into a jail pornography. He pulled up on different occasions pornographic films off of YouTube, one of which was about a man masturbating, and had the officers with him watch those, and that also was on video. What the most interesting thing about what we're all talking about is there are cameras throughout the jail, but these people don't think that anybody watches them. And I can tell you, since we've begun this investigation, and I'm deviating a little, all this has basically not come to a halt, but slowed down dramatically. Now the next is Justin Nicholson and Robin Rugg. They're both charged with 2 counts of conspiracy, controlled substance for contraband, and 2 counts of contraband, controlled substance suborder. There's also counts for conspiracy to commit possession with the intent to deliver and delivery. Additionally, conspiracy to possess drugs, 2 counts of possession, 1 count of conspiracy for paraphernalia, and 1 count for paraphernalia. There's 1 count of criminal use of a communication facility, 1 count of conspiracy to use that communication facility. Communication facilities, if you don't know what it is, it's either a cell phone, a tablet, and it's illegal to use your cell phone or a tablet or a laptop or whatever to commit a crime. And those are felonies. This incident occurred on July the 22nd, 2020, where Rugg, who was not in jail, and Justin Nicholson is in jail, Rugg used an envelope and a motion, a motion that's filed in court that had been sent by Attorney James Natale on a different man, Melvin Nicholson. Well, Rugg took that motion and took that envelope, changed the motion, took the motion, and then on pages, I believe it's 7 and 8, taped them together and put Suboxone strips in between. And then melted in as if James Natale had sent it. And Attorney Natale obviously was interviewed, indicated that that was a motion for Melvin Nicholson, that he never represented Justin Nicholson or Robin Rugg. So what ended up happening is when it got into the jail, Officer Branson, I believe it was, noticed that 1 page was missing, and what then ended up happening is he held it up to the light and saw the Suboxone in between the 2 pages. He then called the Uniontown Police, and the Uniontown Police did the investigation and arrested those 2 individuals. Just so it's clear, Jeffrey Myers was arrested by the county detective John Marshall, and Joshua Monex and Nicole Marie Snyder also were arrested by Uniontown Police. The next case in regard to these matters are Charles Lynn and Matthew Brumley. Charles Lynn was charged, and Matthew Brumley was charged with criminal solicitation to commit contraband, 1 count of criminal solicitation to commit possession with the intent to deliver, 1 count for criminal conspiracy for those matters, criminal solicitation for contraband by an inmate, and criminal solicitation to commit simple possession, criminal conspiracy for contraband, criminal conspiracy for the possession of the contraband by an inmate. Additionally, conspiracy to commit simple possession and criminal use of a communication facility, pardon me, and it occurred on various dates including April the 12th, 2020. At that time, Brumley and Lynn, both in jail, had attempted to have drugs hidden in the hospital at the ER room in Uniontown. Additionally, on several occasions, Brumley had purchased drugs off of Lynn. The incident in regard to the hospital never culminated, but they solicited someone on the outside. The next involves, again, Charles Lynn, and he had conspired also with Matthew Brumley and, on another occasion, and basically the same types of charges that I just announced before, and on that occasion, they've also been charged with obstructing the administration of law or other government organization or function. This was involving Riley Platt and Kathleen Dixon. Riley Platt, I think we've mentioned it to you before. Riley Platt was a guard, pardon me, at the prison. Kathleen Dixon had had a relationship with Charles Lynn. There were cash apps used paying monies to Kathleen Dixon by Charles Lynn, and Riley Platt was the one that smuggled the drugs into the jail. So that involved Riley Platt, Kathleen Dixon, Matthew Brumley, and Justin Nicholson. I'm sorry, and Charles Lynn. So it's clear, and I'm going to deviate a little because we're getting into some different cases right now. When we talk about Suboxone, they're just little strips. However, the cost of Suboxone, if it's cut up into 16 pieces, can be sold anywhere between $50 to $100 per cut piece. Additionally, one full strip can be going for a minimum of $500 to $1,000. Charles Lynn has indicated that for every $5,000 he made, he only paid $1,000 for the drugs. So it's very lucrative when we've been talking about this, that there's a lot of money being made in regard to these matters. Now the next one is an issue out of community action here in Fayette County. Community action during COVID, during the pandemic, was given monies to help people pay their rent if they could not afford it because of losing their job. An individual who had worked at community action actually doctored records and then provided invoices for rental payments and did it in unison with her boyfriend, Daniel Boydhopper. Those two individuals are charged with 5 counts of theft by unlawful taking or disposition, 5 counts of criminal conspiracy to commit theft by unlawful taking or disposition, 5 counts of theft by unlawful taking or disposition on several other matters, 5 counts of criminal conspiracy of theft by unlawful taking or disposition, 5 counts of theft by deception, 5 counts criminal conspiracy for theft by deception, 7 counts of identity theft, 7 counts of conspiracy to commit identity theft, 5 counts of forgery, 5 counts of criminal conspiracy for forgery, 5 counts with tampering with records or identification, 5 counts for criminal conspiracy for tampering with records, 5 counts, another, those were M1s, 5 counts of tampering with records, 5 counts being M2s, then criminal conspiracy related to all the tampering of records, Additionally, the unlawful use of a computer to commit a crime. Then there's 5 counts of criminal conspiracy for that. 5 counts for criminal use of a communication facility, and 5 counts of conspiracy. These actions occurred between March of 2020 through November of 2020, and the amount that was taken was $20,675. The way this was done, that the worker that Community Action would doctor the records, and the people at Community Action can identify her handwriting. She indicated in an interview that she always took files home and worked on the files, and that her boyfriend Daniel Boydhofer must have stolen things out of there, driven away, and made copies. Interestingly enough, she said that he would take it to a business place, which was in Erie, Pennsylvania, and bring them back, or to another location, which was quite a ways away. She also she actually said that Boydhofer did everything and she had no clue about what was going on. But interestingly enough, we have her handwriting, we have her supposedly making phone calls to people, and she documents the phone calls, which never happened. Furthermore, in regard to the 7 counts of identity theft, she actually took records from people's other people's files and used those records, such as pay stubs, and doctored them, changed the names on them to other things, to other fake people that didn't exist, or people that existed that were not receiving any kind of assistance to pay their rents. Some of the locations that they use for rental properties, one of them is a totally vacant lot with nothing but briars and trees on it. Another is Boydhofer's mother and father's business. Another is a house that the county detective went to, knocked on the door, and asked them if they knew Daniel Boydhofer, and were they renting the place off of him, and they said they never knew him in any manner. The bad part is his name is spelled differently, but the persons that lived there were also Boydhofers. What a coincidence. But there were amazing things that these two did, thinking that no one was going to catch them, and the audit by Community Action officials found all this. The next is someone who's been in the news, and he's a police officer. And I think you all have heard about James Shaw and the incidents that have occurred in Westmoreland County. Well, James Shaw has already been arrested. It's been at least in the newspaper up here about an incident that happened at Connellsville Area School District at the senior high school. The victim of that is a minor. He was coming down from the Votech school, walking to catch a ride. In Connellsville, they have the ability, if you want, you can just go to your classes that you need to graduate, and that's what he was doing. You don't have to take any other courses. So he was going down, and he came down from the Votech school, came along a sidewalk on the side of Connellsville Senior High School, and turned, and he was going to cross over and go out to catch a ride from a friend because his mother couldn't pick him up that day. What ended up happening was that 2 school resource officers came out, one of whom was James Shaw. They confronted him. They knew who he was. They said, "We saw you vaping." He admits that he was vaping as he came down from the Votech school. And they said they're going to take him to the principal's office. He said, well, you know, he initially said, "I didn't do anything wrong." And then there was a further development, and then James Shaw grabbed him. And then the guy was saying, "I'm not, what did I do? What did I do?" You know, it was over vaping. They knew who he was. He should have just reported into the principal's office, and they would have taken care of it the next day. But one thing led to another. Shaw then clotheslined him, knocked him down on the ground, and the young man, if you've ever been to Connersville Area Senior High School, on the roadway that's basically out front of the doors, there is a curb. The curb is probably, 6-8 inches high. The young man in the video, and this is all on video, missed hitting the curb with his head by probably about 2 inches. He then gets pulled up by Shaw and puts him in handcuffs. The whole time Shaw was telling him, "You're resisting arrest. You're going to get arrested for this." The problem is, James Shaw is not a police officer other than in South Connersville at the time and over in, I believe it's West Greensburg. An individual who is a police officer does not have jurisdiction out of the jurisdiction in which he is a police officer. As a result of that, he is nothing more than a school resource officer. I'm not taking anything away from what those individuals do, but he cannot arrest anybody and threaten to arrest anybody acting like he's a police officer. But that's what he did. So we took that to the grand jury. The grand jurors had voted, and we've arrested him on those charges. Additionally, at the time of a meeting about this incident, James Shaw did the same types of things that he did over in Westmoreland County. He took his cell phone, put it on record, took it into a room with the vice principal and the victim's mother and another police officer, and recorded the whole conversation. That is illegal to do. You have no authority to do that in Pennsylvania unless you have the consent of the individuals or the district attorney approves a wiretap. No one in that room agreed to be recorded. Something occurred, and then what ended up happening was he put his phone up on a filing cabinet, I believe it was, and when he went out, someone noticed that the phone was being used to record, and as a result of that, it was found out that he recorded all those people inside. That was 4 counts, I believe, of wiretap. But then, as a result of that, Westmoreland County detectives contacted my office, and Corporal, I keep on calling him Trooper, Chief County Detective John Marshall did an investigation based on what Westmoreland County detectives turned over to him, and found that there were recordings on a device that he had. He had a device that he would hide somewhere and record people. Well, he recorded 2 people out at South Connersville Borough Municipal Building in Fayette County, one of whom works for Ford Enterprises, and one of whom was the secretary of the Borough of South Connersville. Those 2 individuals have been contacted and located. Obviously, they told us they never even knew he was doing it and did not agree to it. There are 2 other individuals that we cannot find yet, but we are looking for them, and he was charged for recording those 2 individuals. The next is an individual that works for the County of Fayette in the Tax Assessment Office. His name is William Shipley. He's charged with 5 counts of unlawful use of the computer and for computer crimes, 5 counts of computer trespass, 5 counts of criminal use of a communication facility, and 5 counts of tampering with public records or information. What occurred in this matter is that Mr. Shipley, who is the deputy tax assessor, approximately 3 years ago, created a false tax assessment record and published it on the website for Fayette County tax assessment. In that, and I'm not going to go into the details, it's in the complaint about him, that he used vulgar terms to indicate the owner. He indicated that a street name that was vulgar. Other things in that were not absolutely something that I'm going to talk about in public unless I have to be in a courtroom. But it was absolutely ridiculous to have done. That thing was on the website for 3 years, and it came to the attention of someone from the public, who then reported it to, I believe, the county commissioners. Then the county commissioners and the tax assessment office looked into it, determined that yes, this was there, and Shipley has admitted to doing this. We have no understanding of why. However, as a result of that, those are crimes that he committed, and that's why he's charged. Now the next, and I'm going to skip one and then I'll come back. Justin Nicholson, Derek Beneke, Tiffany Murphy, Samuel Ross, Robin Rugg, all have been charged with counts of corrupt organizations, counts of corrupt organizations with control in enterprise, counts of conspiracy to commit those violations, counts for controlled substance or contraband coming into the jail, counts of possession of controlled substances, counts of PWID, possession with the intent to deliver, and criminal conspiracy to commit possession with the intent to deliver, aiding in one count of aiding a consummation of a crime, criminal use of communication facility, counts dealing in proceeds of unlawful activity, and counts of knowledge of the property is proceeds of an illegal act. And this occurred on August the 6th, 2020. What ended up, again, were there were communications between Nicholson, who was in jail. Come on in. And Derek Beneke and Tiffany Murphy, Samuel Ross, Robin Rugg. What ended up happening was these individuals conspired with Nicholson to bring in the drugs. And at that time, what they did, if you've ever seen the side of the prison where the entryways are, on the third, they have concertina wire up at the windows. They have just a little slot in the window. They built a device. Samuel Ross built a device, and if you've ever seen one of those things you use to take, if you're short like me, off of the very top shelf, you can grab it. That was used along with a pole that he had connected to it, put straws together with Suboxone in it, and then tried to put it through the window in this little area. The bad part for him was that this was all explained on video, which was being monitored by the jail officials. They called the Uniontown police and guards, and as Samuel Ross came up to do it, they seized him, got the drugs. It's pretty interesting to watch on tape somebody trying to put drugs up through a window. Derek Beneke and Justin Nicholson were in jail at the time. Tiffany Murphy and Robin Rugg are the ones that were communicating on the devices, and Samuel Ross was the one that took in the drugs to try to put them in. Now I'm going to go back to Susan Sines. Susan Sines is an officer at the Fayette County Prison, and this just happened in the last month. She's charged with 8 counts of institutional vandalism, 8 counts of recklessly endangering another person, and 1 count of theft by unlawful taking. She works normally the afternoon shifts. In the prison, the prison has a room for eating. What she would do is she would go up and go through everyone's food. And when you first hear it, you think it's kind of comical, but it really isn't. In this day and age with the pandemic and all the other types of things that people can get from the transmission of saliva and the like, she would use her fingers to dip into people's food and eat it, and then stick her fingers back in with her saliva. She would lick her fingers off and then stick it back into the people's food. She would take, for example, hoagies out of people's food and pick them apart and eat, and then stick her hands back after licking her fingers onto their food. She took bites out of people's hamburgers, and as a result, some of them actually ate, well, all of them ate this food. She went in and took salads of one of the prison guards, a female prison guard, and would use the same fork for all of this kind of thing. Stick it in, eat the food with her saliva on it, lick the fork off, put it back in. Now that may sound comical, it is absolutely not. Because with all the things that go on in this world and all the kinds of diseases that can be communicated through saliva, then obviously this is not something that somebody should be doing. And every one of the guards that we talked with indicated that they are concerned about their health now. They are getting tested for all different types of diseases as a result of that. So that is pretty sickening. We've had, interestingly enough, a couple of these that are very terrible. The pornography thing, the one where the individual is up on the table stripping and with her boyfriend, Monex, it's disgusting. Now, additionally, just this week, or last week, within the last week, the Fayette County Bureau of Investigation did a sting, or actually served search warrants on an individual by the name of McVellen Hinton, also known as Pittsburgh Jim. And at that time, when they entered the location of his business and then his home, they took approximately $10,000 and seized cocaine in regard to his activities. In the last year, the defendant, McVellen Hinton, has been selling drugs on a regular basis and has sold drugs to individuals with the Fayette County Bureau of Investigation on 11 occasions. Those dates are September the 13th, 2020, September the 25th, 2020, January the 13th, 2021, February the 2nd, 2021, February the 4th, 2021, February the 17th, 2021, February the 23rd, 21, and there are other dates that he's done this. And we've had him under surveillance for over a year. He's a major dealer. And we were given a tip that he had re-upped his stash, and he was served the search warrants for both of those locations. I believe it was on Monday. And there were several individuals involved in that case. I'm not going to go into the officers' names for their safety, but that's when they raided the places and got the drugs and the money. Now, that's basically all we have today for you, except for the fact that I'm going to tell you this very bluntly. The grand jurors have voted to extend our grand jury for another 6 months beginning in June. Now, interestingly enough, we're going to ask the judge, the president, well, actually the judge that's been assigned to oversee it, to exclude all that time that we've been down for the COVID pandemic. However, in an abundance of caution, we asked the grand jurors whether they would agree to having it extended for another 6 months, beginning at sometime in June. Unanimously, they all agreed to do so. Additionally, so that you understand, I'm not going to go into any detail, we have at least 4 major investigations going on right now. When I say major, I'm not talking about things in the prison. I'm talking about things outside of the prison. We just picked up a couple more just this week, not involved with these 4 major investigations. So as we go along, and as I said before, we thought we would be done last October. It does not look like we're going to be done, obviously, last October. What has happened is we've been contacted on several occasions that people now see that this is going on in Fayette County. We have been contacted by agencies knowing that this office and the county commissioners and the Uniontown Police, Collinsville Police, State Police, we don't care who you are. If you're involved in corruption or if you're involved in something that's criminal, if we get a contact, we're going to do the investigation, and if it proves there are crimes, we're going to arrest you. So let it be made perfectly clear. Everyone standing up here, and then the guys that have been up here before from the state police, we are not afraid to come after you. And we will come after you. Corruption is not good, and very bluntly, it's time for it to stop, or at least we're not going to stop at all, but we're going to try and make a major dent, and I think we're starting to make a major dent. So, ladies and gentlemen, very bluntly, again, we're not going to. And very interestingly enough, all the attorneys in my office and my staff and all the police don't mind that we're not done. Because if you did it and we find out about it, we're coming after you. Thank you very much. Anybody have any questions?
Who's the community action employee that was being investigated?
Megan Sims.
Okay.
I forgot to mention it.
Okay.
She actually now works for the courts.
Is she still employed with us?
Well, she was just, the charges were just filed this morning. Nobody knew about it other than myself, Detective Marshall, the grand jurors, First Assistant Melinda Delarose, and William Martin and Sean Lementowski, Assistant DAs.
Rich, all of these cases cover a wide variety of areas, the jail, outside the jail. Is there, just to sum it up simply, is there an overarching theme to this grand jury, or this, what's the message for people in the county as far as what you're after and what the kind of scope of this investigation entails?
Well, when we first started, it was going to center around the jail. But the more we got involved in it, then, as I said, for example, community action came to us. We just got several cases where people have come. We're actually having agencies coming to us about matters that nobody else will touch because they're afraid. And I'm not going to mention those agencies, but we've already told them, we don't care. The overall theme is it's corruption. It's anything that you bring to us that's illegal, and we find it and make the determination it's illegal, we're not afraid to go after it.
Rich, you think with the addition of the new jail that's going to be coming soon, that this will knock some of that activity down?
I think, quite frankly, we've knocked a lot of the activity down in the jail. We have been very, very fortunate to have the people at the jail and the county commissioners help us clean that place up. when we first started, it seemed like it was every day we were finding something out. Now, it's very seldom that anything is going on. For example, we've had several guards leave because they think they may be investigated. We've already taken out several guards in regard to being charged. For example, Scott Bush, he pled guilty to every felony in regard to the gun charges. There are other ones that we've taken care of in regard to certain things who have ended up cooperating, but they're not getting off. I really do believe, and I think the commissioners and the warden would concur, that very bluntly, the actions that were going on before we started have slowed down tremendously. They tried to get around by doing things like using devices to try and put drugs into the prison. But we knew they were doing it because they were so stupid, they're talking about it on the videos. They're talking about it on phone calls. Well, that's stopped, basically. You know, the prison guards that were smuggling things in, they're gone. I think that the actions we've taken are going to be very worthwhile for having a new prison. And you've got to give kudos to the commissioners for finally building the new prison and breaking ground just a few weeks ago. It's been needed for years. So, and that's going to be a state-of-the-art facility. That is going to be something that we've needed. And now with all our actions, I think that we're getting to the point where we can trust to a degree people. But I'm not saying all the way. Any other questions?
You mentioned indictments. Do you have just a head count on how many individuals have been charged in connection with this grand jury so far?
117.
117 different people.
117 people to. We aren't finished. I mean, with the ongoing investigations going on now, we're far from being finished. Any questions for Melinda or for Jason? Any of the commissioners? None? All right, well, thank you very much. Hope you like the setting for us. It's our place. Well, that's because I turned the air conditioner off.